Hello everyone, I am back with another video. Today continuing with my top 25 PlayStation 4 game list. If you missed part 1, I'd strongly recommend that you watch that video first to kind of hear what those bottom 15 games were, but also the rules that I had made for myself when coming up with this list of games. And before we get into my top 10 games, I also want to again encourage all of you, leave me a comment below, let me know what some of your favorite games are, maybe your top 10, because it's very unlikely that all of your games are going to show up on my list. That's the beauty of creating these types of videos, is hearing the personal taste of each person and how you would rank each of those games for a particular console. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk through my top 10 games on the PlayStation 4.
I vividly remember walking into a GameStop back in 2018, and the person working there asked me what type of games that I liked. And I told her I love JRPGs and 3D platformers, so she suggested that I pick up Ni no Kuni 2 and Yooka-Laylee, both of which I ended up buying. Within a week, I not only beat Yooka-Laylee, but I 100%ed the game and got the Platinum Trophy. Wandering its giant levels in buddy platformer fashion as Yuka and Laylee, and searching every square inch of the level to find every collectible reminded me of my favorite games I played as a kid, like Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and the Spyro trilogy on PlayStation 1. I know having this game on my top 25 PS4 games list, let alone my top 10, is going to have people scratching their heads. But that's the beauty of these types of lists. They're personal and specific to the person creating them. And I'll be the first to admit that as a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, Yooka-Laylee never quite reaches those heights. And probably contrary to popular opinion, I think that's okay. The soundtrack is still excellent thanks to the wonderful Grant Kirkhope, who also composes the OST to Banjo-Kazooie. Platforming's tight, the writing is witty and ridiculous, and there's a heaping ton of fun collectibles to find. It's also probably worth noting that when I was in college, I missed out on a lot of the late 360, PS3, Wii era of games, and was mostly playing my DS and 3DS during those years. So playing Yooka-Laylee was an excellent reminder for me just how much I love the 3D platformer genre. It's not only one of my favorite PS4 games, it's one of my favorite 3D platformers, and I just hope that more people will consider giving it a try, even if it never quite compares with the 3D Marios of the world, or even Banjo-Kazooie that it's aspiring to emulate. I, like many people, enjoyed the first few Assassin's Creed games, but I kinda grew tired of their annual installments and its rinse and repeat gameplay formula. That was until I tried Assassin's Creed Valhalla on PS5 back in 2021, which kinda sent me down an animus rabbit hole of playing all the Assassin's Creed games that I never got around to. The one that truly solidified my love of the franchise, though, was Assassin's Creed Origins. Set in ancient Egypt, you play as a man named Bayek, and for reasons I won't go into, him and his wife begin partnering with a secret organization of people known as the Hidden Ones to exact revenge on another group of people. As someone who's always had a fascination with ancient Egypt, it was a remarkable experience exploring this world, scaling the pyramids of Giza, and even running around doing missions for Cleopatra. By the end of the game, I was completely taken back by how invested in Bayek and Aya's story I became, and seeing how, as the name of the game would imply, you see how the literal origins of the Creed came to be. If you're looking for the perfect jumping in place for the Assassin's Creed series, whether you played the first few games and walked away like me, or you're a newcomer to the series altogether, there's no better place to start than right here with Origins. I'm not sure how much more I can add to the 2018 God of War conversation than what's already been said. Santa Monica Studios took a huge risk completely reinventing the character of Kratos, unlike I've probably ever seen in a game or franchise, and it worked exceptionally well for them. Seeing the once enraged, mythological god-murdering Kratos now have a son of his own that he needs to look after and attempt to be a role model for was such a great narrative setup for the character and the story that Santa Monica Studios wanted to tell. And from a combat side of things, throwing that Leviathan axe, whipping it back, and tearing through waves of enemies rarely grew stale over the course of its 30-hour story. Similar to The Last of Us and the Uncharted series, God of War has some of the most cinematic, unforgettable moments in gaming, where I was either smiling ear to ear, brimming with excitement, or on the verge of tears. Now, while I'm probably in the minority in saying this, I liked Ragnarok just a bit better than this first game, but both are phenomenal in their own right, and a special shout out to the incredible cast that voiced and brought these characters to life. Not to mention the excellent score by Bear McCreary. Even though the Middle-earth games were received well critically, I rarely hear anyone talking about these games. And as good as the first game, Shadow of Mordor was, Shadow of War built upon that foundation in just about every meaningful way. From the Batman Arkham-style combat, to the world traversal, similar to the earlier Assassin's Creed games, not to mention you had Ringwraith-like powers thanks to the Elf Lord Celebrimbor, you felt like a complete badass as the main protagonist Talion. Now, the Shadow games are probably most notably known for introducing an incredibly unique concept called the Nemesis system, which not only allows Talion to gain Orc and Uruk-hai followers, but you can manipulate and order these followers to go and take out other captains across the map. It's an insane game of Lord of the Rings chess, and you feel like a puppet master of sorts when you perfectly orchestrate attacks that are so consistently satisfying and rewarding. The other thing that I have to mention are these things called fortress battles, where you'll have to overtake 5 different areas of Mordor. They are epic in scale and are literally on par with the battles of Helm's Deep and Pelennor Fields. You climb walls, battle your way through the city, and eventually you make your way to a throne room to kill the overlord of the fortress. It's an exhilarating experience, and again, something I don't feel is highlighted or talked about enough. I really hope we see current-gen remasters of both Shadow of Mordor and War, one so I can play them both again, but also so I can continue to encourage more folks to play these incredible games. I usually take my time with story-based games, but there are rare exceptions when I power through in just a few short days. The Last of Us Part 2 was one of those rare exceptions as I rolled credits in 3 days after starting it. I of course won't spoil anything, but what an emotional roller coaster this game was, and one that has a lot more emotional lows than it has highs, and at times feel like it's unrelenting with its brutality and violence. Few games, if any that I can think of, have committed so hard narratively to the story they wanted to tell than what Naughty Dog did in this second chapter. And for as layered and emotionally shattering as it can be at times, I couldn't pull myself away from the TV and felt compelled to keep going in hopes of reaching those moments of levity, as few and far between as they might be over the course of its 30+ hour adventure. It's not a journey to take lightly, but I am glad I did, and I genuinely look forward to having conversations with friends after they finish the game as well. I'll also be the first to admit that from a moment-to-moment gameplay perspective, The Last of Us doesn't really move the needle in any meaningful way, but as someone who loves stealth games, I do enjoy sneaking around the environments, taking out each enemy without alarming anyone. I'm not sure where The Last of Us will go from here, if anywhere, but I wouldn't mind seeing a third and final chapter with these characters. Bloodborne, like I said about God of War earlier, I don't know how much more I can add to the conversation, but this is a generation-defining game like Breath of the Wild, Super Mario 64, or Grand Theft Auto 3. It's also the first FromSoft, Soulsborne type game that truly got its hooks in me. Unlike the heavier, slower combat of Dark Souls, Bloodborne is much faster as you dodge roll to avoid one-hit kills from these creepy, giant bosses, and chain together attacks as you'll often switch between light and heavy modes depending on the weapon you're using, which I absolutely loved. Like its Souls predecessors, Bloodborne is no walk in the park. It can be maddening with its difficulty at times, but I never cursed the game itself after dying a dozen times on a single boss. It was usually my own fault because I got a little too greedy and tried to sneak in one too many attacks on Father Gascoigne before he bested me. Or I was just underleveled. These games take patience and persistence, and eventually you'll persevere. When you do, it's immensely satisfying and rewarding in a way that few games or series could ever compare. When anyone asks me, hey, I've never played a Souls-like game before, where should I start? My go-to answer without hesitation is always Bloodborne. It's as newcomer-friendly as a Souls-like game can be, and I still think it's the best in the series so far. When Insomniac Games was given the choice of using any character in Marvel's catalog back in 2014, they chose Spider-Man, both for his appeal to the employees at the time and the similarities in traversal gameplay to their previous Xbox exclusive title, Sunset Overdrive. I was ecstatic when this game was announced, one because I love Insomniac's previous games, like the original Spyro trilogy, and of course the Ratchet & Clank games. But I'm also a huge fan of prior Spider-Man games, particularly Spider-Man 2, based on the Sam Raimi film of the same name. Freely swinging around New York City as Spidey is an absolute blast because of how Insomniac perfected the controls. There are also a ton of fun side activities to complete, like collecting Spidey's backpacks or snapping photos of certain areas around the city. Even if there was a few too many warehouse outposts to complete, most of them are optional unless you're going for 100% completion in the Platinum Trophy. Now again, without going to spoilers, the story is split into 3 acts, and I was pleasantly surprised with how refreshing a take it was on the character, while still feeling authentically Spider-Man. The voice acting for the main and supporting cast is also terrific. Insomniac hasn't only created the best Spider-Man game, I also think it's the best superhero game to date, maybe sharing the #1 spot with Batman Arkham Asylum, and I cannot wait to play Spider-Man 2 later this fall. I loved the original Uncharted trilogy on PlayStation 3, so I couldn't wait to play the supposed conclusion to Nate's story in Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, and Naughty Dog did not disappoint. With all the signature Uncharted gameplay you'd expect, you'll scale cliffs, solve plenty of puzzles, and Nate will continue to tally up a body count that would give John Wick a run for his money. But the stakes just seem so much higher in this one, given what Nate is putting on the line and risking to continue pursuing his treasure hunting adventures. Like Naughty Dog's more recent games, it's as cinematic in its storytelling as they come, and even today, an incredible looking game graphically, particularly during its grander set-piece moments. There are few TV shows, movies, or games that have what I would consider perfect endings, but Uncharted 4's ending is on par with Breaking Bad, in the sense that I don't think they could have penned it any better. I won't spoil it for those that haven't played it, but it's excellent stuff, and I'm still holding out hope that we see one more adventure with Nate and company someday, maybe at the end of the PlayStation 5, or maybe even on the PlayStation 6. I may be cheating including this one on my list, but it's in alignment with my rules since it's a remaster for a game I never played when it originally released, and that's That Game Company's Journey. I remember so many people here on YouTube and across the industry singing the praises of Journey when it released back in 2012, but I never played it myself, until 2020 when I had a small stint streaming on Twitch, and I'm so thankful that I was able to not only play this game with so many good friends watching, but also so I could capture my experience playing this magical game. In the brief 2 hours it took me to roll credits, I was overwhelmed with so many emotions as I went on this literal journey with another person, or little friend as I referred to them as during the stream. I never spoke a word to this person, found out who they were or knew what they looked like, but the bond that was almost instantly created when this person appeared was palpable in a way that's tough to explain. We navigated this world together, discovering its secrets and finding its hidden collectibles, and the fear of separation or losing this person was a terrifying and looming thought. Thankfully, we made it to the end of the game together without ever being separated. As many have probably said before, Journey is a beautiful experience that evoked emotions in me unlike any other game had before. With its breathtaking musical score by Austin Wintory, incredible, striking graphical style, I cannot recommend Journey enough. It's one of my favorite games ever. And coming in at #1 is none other than Sucker Punch's Ghost of Tsushima. Set in feudal Japan, you play as a local samurai, Jin Sakai, and after some events that I won't spoil, you're left to explore this island to recruit allies in an eventual attempt to combat the Mongols that have recently invaded. Exploring this island and just taking in the absolutely stunning art and world design is phenomenal. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I entered photo mode to snap the perfect shot as I made my way through the game. Combat is also a major highlight as you have to master multiple stances depending on the type of enemy you're facing. I thoroughly enjoyed the main story as well, and while the side quests might not be quite as strong as The Witcher 3, rarely did I ever feel like they were throwaway fetch quests. More often than not, they built upon Jin's story in the supporting cast in meaningful, memorable ways. It's also worth noting that I've played the Iki Island expansion as part of the PS5 remaster, which served as a great epilogue of sorts to the events of the main game. Now I can only hope that the rumors are to be believed, and Sucker Punch is hard at work on a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, my favorite game on the PlayStation 4.
Alright, that is a wrap for my top 25 PS4 games. What'd you think? I'm sure there's going to be people that are upset that Yooka-Laylee in an Assassin's Creed game made it into my top 10, but that's the beauty. That's the fun of creating these types of videos. I would encourage you, once again, as I said at the top, leave me a comment below. What are some of your favorite PS4 games? And if you didn't see some of your favorites on this top 25, maybe I haven't played it, so leave me a recommendation. I'm always looking to expand my horizons with the PlayStation 4 library. And I'll also just remind you, like I did in part 1, that a third and final part to this 3-part series is going to be coming soon, where I took 50 of my favorite PS4 games, whittled that list down to 25, and then ranked all of those games that made up the first 2 parts to this video series. So if you like those longer form type of videos, you can kind of throw up in your browser and almost treat it as a podcast of sorts, that'll be coming in a week as well, so stay tuned for that. If you'd consider liking the video, sharing it with others, I'd very much appreciate it. But I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.